Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar hosted by Human Synergistics. Today's topic, culture and leadership, driving supply chain transformation, is quite timely. And although we won't be solving our current supply troubles, we will provide a glimpse into a supply chain pioneer, their 3-year transformation journey, and share how you might apply a proven framework and key learnings to your leadership and organizational development efforts. The slide deck and recording from our session will be available in the coming days, so watch your email for our follow-up. Also, feel free to ask questions using the questions pane in the platform. We will address as many questions as possible at the end of the session. Today's speakers is myself. I'm Mary McCulloch, and I'm your host and moderator. I'm also the Director of Leadership and Culture Solutions here at Human Synergistics. We're excited to be celebrating our 50th anniversary this year as we continue to change the world one organization at a time. And I'm delighted to co-facilitate with Maria Ferrante, an experienced leadership and culture consultant with Performance to Potential. Maria is located in Argentina and is an accredited practitioner with an educational background in philosophy, instructional design, and applied leadership development. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much. And hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. It's a real joy to be here and to share with you. I look forward to thank you for having me, and thank you for inviting me to share one of the most, I think, inspirational client stories that I have. And I'm hoping to transmit some of the work and the work and the impact we had, and how we use the tools and the methodologies that we applied to the project. So looking forward to it.
Great, me too. All right. So let's look. Today's agenda, Maria is going to be walking through these key components of a 3-year culture and leadership journey, and then we'll finish up with key learnings and Q&A. So Maria, let's get started. I'll advance your slides as you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Okay, so for a little bit of context, we're working with European Union local subsidiary of one of the big supply chain and logistics solutions company. You can see in the numbers on the slide, it's one of the big ones. The local subsidiary in the European Union country is comprised of 6 different business units catering to a wide range of industries, from manufacturing, aviation to healthcare and retail. They have a very big employee base, but we're working with a target population of 800 leaders and decision makers. You will see when I tell you a little bit about the business challenge that it was clear from the beginning that the focus of the work, at least at the beginning, was going to be the leaders and decision makers. So we're working with the top team comprised of the general managers of these business units and the functional leaders of the company. So it's a top team of 12 people that run this company. And the challenge, we start working with them in 2019. The new CEO has been appointed, and he has a very clear mandate to bring the company to perform to global standards. So a little bit about the history. The local subsidiary was the result of a series of local acquisition of smaller companies, and it was at the time performing very autonomously from the global company. So it was not underperforming, but there was a strong need to bring it to perform to global standards and expectations. So that was the CEO's clear mandate. The other thing that was happening is that just as it was working very autonomously from global, it was also working very independently. So the 6 business units were operating as 6 separate companies. And they were missing out on key opportunities, and the challenge was to bring them to operate as one company. And for that purpose, we needed to get them to work. We needed to help them create a one-team culture. The opportunities that they were missing, two very important ones that had a direct impact on bottom line. The first one is they were missing the opportunity to create economies of scale. This is very important in the supply chain industry because it's an industry with very low profit margins. So the fact that they can leverage synergies and operate together had a direct impact on the bottom line. So that's the first one. And the second one, their ability to become more competitive by offering more comprehensive solutions to their clients. So it's not just the warehouse space, but also the packaging and also the transportation, for example. They were not doing that because they were operating separately. Really, they were not different business units of the same company. They operated as different businesses altogether. So creating that one team culture and fostering collaboration was really, really important. And the other important part of the challenge is the company is renowned for its people orientation and focus on development of growth of their people. So the challenge was also to do all of this and also include and bring people along, never losing the focus on people. So given this challenge, it was clear to us that we needed to focus our work first on the top team, the leadership team, and help them operate as a high-performing team. And to do that, it was also clear to us that we needed them to look at themselves, hold up a mirror to themselves, and look at their behaviors and mindsets and how their own behaviors, mindsets, and leadership styles were impacting their ability to collaborate and their ability to become more integrated into together into one team and then into the global company. So we start with self, and we invite them on a self-awareness and developmental journey. For that purpose, we're going to be using two of the human synergistics tools, the leadership work styles at the very beginning of the process and the leadership impact at the end. I'll share a little bit more about that. We want them as a team to envision the business as a whole and themselves as the owners of this business, not just the owners of their own unit or their own function, but the business as a whole, and to work as a high-performing team, to start having the meaningful conversations that a high-performance team has. So far, their meetings, their interactions were more informational and they were exchanging updates, but they were not really making decisions and solving business problems together. So we need them to start operating like that. And then at the beginning, we're also looking at culture, because culture is also raising a mirror to themselves. It's a different kind of mirror because it's the mirror of the impact they are having on their people. So we want to explore culture, and we want to understand the current status of the culture and what it looks like, because it also reflects on their leadership style and the kind of impact they're having. So for the exploration of culture, we're using the organizational culture inventory, and we're combining it with qualitative research. We have conducted 60 interviews of that target 800 people population. So Mary, I'll pass it on to you to share a little bit about the tools themselves.
Terrific. Thanks, Maria. So let's review these instruments that were used in this transformation journey. Human Synergistics has developed an integrated suite of assessments that provide a common language and framework that support development at all levels. And so this is what Maria and their team did, is they utilized 3 different assessments. The first one was the Organizational Culture Inventory, or OCI. This is a culture assessment, culture survey, and it distinguishes distinguishes between effective and ineffective organizations, measuring two aspects of culture: what is expected and what is preferred. The second instrument is a 360 assessment called the Acumen Leadership Work Styles, or LWS. And this is a 360, and it's measuring the thinking and behavioral styles that either help or hinder the effectiveness of leaders and managers. And then the last assessment is also a 360, but it's very different. It's Leadership Impact, or LI. And this is an instrument that measures the current leadership strategies and the impact those strategies are having on others' behavior and performance. So it really links what leaders are doing to what they're encouraging or driving within the culture. All of these assessments incorporate our human synergistic circumplex, which measures 12 styles of thinking and behaving. The styles are grouped into 3 clusters, and I want to go through those now. First, we have the constructive cluster, and this is the styles that lead to greater levels of effectiveness. They're represented in blue, and these are the 11 to 2 o'clock positions, and they include achievement, self-actualizing, humanistic encouraging, and affiliative. The next cluster is the passive defensive cluster. And these styles lead to usually less effectiveness and greater levels of ineffectiveness. And these are represented in green and are from the 3 to 6 o'clock positions. And these styles include approval, conventional, dependent, and avoidance. And the last cluster is in red, and these are our aggressive defensive styles. And these lead to a mixed performance and mixed levels of effectiveness. These styles are from the 7 to 10 o'clock positions, and they include oppositional, power, competitive, and perfectionistic. Each of these styles are normed, and the median or average score is at the 50th percentile. That is the third the third circle from the center that's a little bolder. That's the 50th. So our research over the years has demonstrated that higher levels of performance, effectiveness, and satisfaction occur when you have constructive styles that are above that 50th percentile, and the passive defensive and aggressive defensive are below that 50th. So that is the case whether you're looking at our culture or the 360 assessments, but it's a unifying research outcome, and that these connections or strong correlations exist. Maria, I'm going to hand it back to you to continue on with the case study.
Thank you, Mary. And I wanted to show you a little bit what these circumplexes looked like in the case of the case study. So when we look at the culture, this is the circumplex that we get. And very briefly, what we see is indeed a very strong constructive pull. You can see there the constructive styles, especially in the humanistic encouraging. Nonetheless, this culture is predominantly aggressive defensive, and it's as though the aggressive defensive styles are keeping in check the bigger growth of the constructive, and they're pulling them back. And what does it mean? What does it mean to have an aggressive defensive culture? So it's a very strong action orientation and a very fast pace. This is a culture that is about getting things done and getting results. It's very process oriented and compliance oriented for industry in particular. But the getting results and getting things done pull is sometimes not at the expense of process, because it is very, very process oriented, but it's at the expense of sometimes people orientation and well-being. And so there is a strong pressure for results, and in this aggressive culture, there is also no room for mistakes. And it's a culture where people feel that they need to prove themselves and show competence. And sometimes that means, you see there that the competitive is the highest. Sometimes you see that this need to stand out and show competence is sometimes over others. So this is preventing collaboration. And this is one of the root cause of our challenge. When we look at the thinking of the leaders, and Mary, if you can show the next circumplex, this is the leadership work styles showing the thinking styles of the 12 leaders. And of course, here there's, you will see that there's a little bit of red, there's a little bit of green, a little bit of blue. So yeah, because this is a diverse set of leaders, but we can also see that it's predominantly aggressive thinking in the leaders. So this is a leadership style that is more on the traditional command and control style, very imperative mode of communication, for example. But above all, what I find here in this circumplex is the fact that if you look at the first styles 1 and 2, the two constructive styles, blue styles that are people-oriented, humanistic, encouraging, and affiliative, those score very low. So this says that at this point, at the beginning of our project and our journey, leaders are not focusing, are not thinking in terms of collaboration, teamwork, building trust, creating an atmosphere of support. So they're not thinking in terms of humanistic, encouraging, and affiliative. This again is a demonstration of that the lack of collaboration and the work in silos is really a challenge in the culture. When we ask a subset of the leaders to define their desired culture, we are using the OCI ideal culture. We have a strong agreement that this is what the ideal culture looks like. You can see there a very striking blue culture that combines the task orientation and the people orientation. So it's that strong pull to achieve and get results combined with doing it collectively and in a collaborative way and bringing people along. So this is the findings that we get at the very beginning when we start working with the top team. And this is what this information is what enables us to start thinking of a journey of culture transformation for this client. And so let me tell you a little bit about the journey. And one of the design principles that we had for this journey was there's clear direction. We have the ideal culture and there's clear direction where we want to go. There's a very strong intent from the leaders to go in that direction. And at the same time, we're strongly grounded in the present moment and sensing what is needed at each time. So what is needed at the very beginning of the process is to focus on the top team and to develop them as a high-performing team. Mary, if you can show the next slide, please, for year one. So that's what we do during the whole of the first year. We work with the top leaders and, like I said before, doing their own self-development and awareness program and process. And at the same time, we measure the culture, we define the desired culture shift, and only after the end of the first year are the leaders ready to face the organization and bring the next level of leaders along. And this is very important because already they've been working for a full year to develop themselves as a team and themselves as leaders, individual leaders. So when they turn around to the organization and they face their more immediate teams, that their teams have already seen that something's happening. And there's a milestone that is the inflection point between year one and year two of the process, and that's a VP meeting. So it's these 12 leaders with their direct reports, a group of around 100 leaders. If you, Mary, if I move to the next slide, this is a milestone because this is a moment when the 12 leaders stand in front of their teams and share the journey, but not from a process perspective and what they've been doing. They share what it's meant for them and what they've realized, and very openly and vulnerably share their findings. They actually showed their LWS results to the teams. And for a culture that doesn't allow mistakes and is very fast-paced and is demanding of results, this is very countercultural. Really, it is. And people are very happily surprised. And what that did is enable the rest of it gives permission to the rest of the people to share and open up and start connecting more. And what it creates is a group of believers that the change is not just talk, and that these leaders are really intent on changing. So after that BP meeting comes the culture conference, where the bigger culture, leadership culture of the company gets together, and that's the launch of the second year of the culture transformation process. It's early 2020, right before COVID strikes, so everything changes after that. And really, the culture conference happened in March, like 2 weeks before COVID. So when COVID strikes, and you know, we're talking about supply chain disruption, and it has hit the news recently and everything, but for them, disruption happened on that day. Day one, they were already disrupted. There were business units that came to a complete operational halt at that time. And other business units, like, for example, the ones taking care of healthcare, had to double or triple in size to be able to cater for the increased demand. And the way the organization responds to that crisis is unprecedented for them. The degree of collaboration, the degree of all hands on deck, no matter what hierarchy, everybody is there to lend a hand and to make things happen. We hear stories about projects that would have needed 6 months to launch are now launching in a couple of weeks. It's really, they are living the ideal culture, and they're getting a glimpse of what's possible. So COVID is a catalyst of transformation. At that time, we're doing culture sessions, culture support sessions, groups of 10 to 12 leaders getting together to chat about how they're doing, how they're coping. And we keep hearing this phrase, Mary, if you click on the next, I think we have the quote there. We keep hearing this. If it hadn't been for the culture work and our increased awareness of our impact as leaders on culture and on how we need to change our behavior in order to change the culture, we wouldn't have been able to pull any of these through. So it was the perfect timing that this work started right then to give them a glimpse of what's possible, and that accelerated the change. Year 2 went on with the same journey that the top leaders had gone through with the next level leaders. So they're all doing their LWSs, going through their own personal reflection and development process, and at the same time working on the culture of their own teams. So we're building strong teams at the level of the business units and the functions. And now we're ready for year 3. And year 3 is about building a culture movement. And if you think about a movement is something you join because you're inspired and you're excited about what's being done. So that is what we're creating. So the second design principle for the journey that we're inviting them on is it's volunteer-based. And we design a culture program, and we invite the leaders to train as facilitators and coaches, and so it is their own leaders on their own time and on their own schedules that are teaching this content and delivering this content to the rest of the organization, to the rest of the leaders. So far, we have a group of around 40 volunteers influencing the culture of the 100 leaders and contributors. So, and they've conducted about more than 30 of these programs. One other key element of the program is the inclusion of peer learning. So this is a program that comprises two big sessions, two two-day sessions, and peer learning in between. Groups of 4 or 5 leaders that get together to discuss leadership issues and to help each other help each other through their issues with the lens of the new culture, behaviors, and mindsets. So this is really creating a network of support. I was the facilitator and the coaching in some of the early circles, and I've been a witness myself. They had a series of sessions that were facilitated by us, but then on the last session, they would arrange to keep meeting regularly, because this proved to be so useful and really building a full network of support amongst themselves. One last point about year 3 that is important, because now that the new culture starts to be more and more embedded in the organization, people are looking up to their leaders, and they're looking up for role models. So the top team is still working, and now what they're doing is as the next step in their journey is they're measuring their impact as leaders, the kind of culture that they are creating. So we put them through a process of leadership impact, and I wanted to show you some of the results that we had here. So this is the thinking of the leaders that we showed earlier, and this is the current impact. This is from 2021. And although the two instruments are not comparable, you can see that at the beginning of the process, the thinking of the leaders is not focused on people. It's more aggressive, and you can see how the impact 3 or 2.5 years into the program, they are not in spite of the thinking, and we don't know if it has changed or not, but now they are indeed encouraging lots of people orientation. They are encouraging humanistic, encouraging behaviors. They are encouraging affiliative behaviors that have to do with teamwork, with collaboration, with networks of support. So there's a big constructive impact that the leaders are having. So that's the end of the journey and the end of the story.
Great. Wow, Maria, it's such an impactful, I mean, just looking back at these slides, and I love how to see the thinking on the profile on the left of these leaders and how it's shifted in the impact they want to have on others' behavior, but the role of wanting to have such a constructive impact. Now, clearly they have more work to do, because we see, further extensions on some of the red and the green in the impact profile, but it is really a transformation in what they want to achieve and how they want to impact the organization. So thank you so much for sharing such a timely success story, given today's focus on global supply chain challenges. It's really inspiring to see how leaders, managers, and teams rallied around a common business objectives and need, given COVID, and really drove through some compelling outcomes. Can you wrap this up for us with some of your key learnings?
Yes, sure. So at the beginning, I shared that this is one of the most inspirational processes that I've been a part of. And I think 2 big things for me as key learnings is, first, I think this is a story of leadership courage, because it's the story of leaders that are willing to look at themselves and in doing that, transforming a whole culture. So also the learning that the impact of leaders in transforming culture. So, those concentric circles that I showed at the beginning, it's the impact of leaders in transforming cultures. When leaders transform, they transform culture. And the way to transform really is by going in and looking inwards and reflecting on our own behavior and mindsets and how those are having an impact, and the courage to change them. So that's the first. And the second one, which may seem paradoxical to the first, but it's that changing culture is really about creating a movement, and creating a movement that people want to join, and not forcing it on people, but inviting people and showing them how by doing things differently, you can achieve so much better results and be more effective. And you know, that combination, you can get better results, be more effective, and live and work in a very healthy environment that takes care of you, and that is supportive of your growth.
Yes.
So for me,
wow.
Those two were the big learnings from this case, and it was inspiring to witness. And we still haven't remeasured culture. There's a year 4 coming up, so we're looking forward to those results.
Oh, it is such an inspiring story, and it's also such a solid example of positive change and how it takes time, and it's always better when people are included, they're committed, and then the transformation can and does happen. So really inspiring story, and we really appreciate you sharing it with us. So let's see if we have some questions. I think I've seen a few come in. Let's see, here's one that, let me just see. Yeah, let me take this first one. Because COVID-19 hit during the second year of the program, do you think the pandemic was an enabler of change or a prohibitor to change? Please explain.
Yeah, no, I think the fact that COVID hit during the second year, it was a catalyst, because it helped, it was crisis. And because they were already doing that work, I think they responded the way that they responded. So the crisis was really an opportunity, and it showed them what it would be like to live in that ideal culture. And so I think it was a catalyst of change and transformation.
Yeah, it sure seemed to me, just as you explained the story and have been sharing it in our preparation even, it sure seems like it like accelerated it, you know, for sure, because they had to, and they also realized what they could do, which I think is so inspiring, and also assuring, like, wow, okay, we're really ready to do this. Great. All right. So here's another question. What motivated these senior level leaders who were in such a command and control mindset, and also, you know, often it was all about action at the expense of relationships? What really helped shift them to change their behavior?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think thinking of this and thinking back on the story, I think one thing that really motivated them was the CEO. We first partnered with him, and he could see all these challenges, and he was already a role model of the culture that he wanted to create, and he wanted to bring people along. So I think having a very clear role model of how to do things differently, and how by doing things differently, you could be very effective, that helped a lot. And then the other thing that I think was a very important motivator for change was the tool, the 360 tool. And it was really like holding up a mirror. And they were hard things to see about oneself and about one's impact. And that they had the courage to say, yes, this is what I'm doing, and I want to change it because I realize how it can be different. So I think those two things combined motivated them to change. And then once they were on the journey, and they could see that with very small shifts in their behavior, they could achieve so much, and they could have so much connection with their people and amongst themselves, I think that sparked the need for continuing on the journey.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And it's part of it is just awareness. But like you said, the role modeling of the senior leader, I mean, there's a number of things there that you can see how it all contributed to them realizing, and then the reinforcing of, oh my gosh, if I do this, I actually see greater outcomes and more favorable outcomes. And I want to keep doing that. Why wouldn't I? So that's awesome. Here's a question that kind of ties into what you were just saying is, so in this next phase, you mentioned that you're going to be starting year 4 here, the organization starting year 4. Is the plan for all 800 leaders of these to go through a similar or same process?
Yeah, we're in planning stages for year 4, so it's not finalized, but the idea is to continue to create the movement and to continue with this design principle of having it come from inside and led by volunteers and people that are passionate about changing the culture, and that they are already role modeling the new behaviors and the new mindsets that we want to install in the culture. So yes, the idea is to continue building momentum for the movement to grow.
Okay, great. You know, there's another question here that I think it ties into kind of the whole leadership change. They're asking, Maria, how did you get the organization to buy into long-term culture change?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, that's a good question, because sometimes organizations or client organizations, if you tell them from the start, this is going to be a 4-year process or a 5-year process, it seems like, oh my God, we live in a culture that is very, things need to happen fast. So the prospect of 4 years of work to get to culture change, I think it was because of this approach that where we have a very clear intent and very clear direction of change, but we're sensing what is needed at each time. So we're not saying from the very beginning, this is going to take 3 years or 4 years. At this time, in the present moment, this is the next move for change. And this is the biggest impact lever for change. So let's concentrate on doing this. And this may be leadership training, or this may be reviewing systems or different aspects of the culture that can be intervened on. And they're not, some of them are not fast. They don't happen fast, but certainly they happen in a shorter time frame. So I think the growth here and the process was very organic. And there is a plan, but there isn't that kind of, it's going to take 4 years, or if it's not 4 years, it won't change. It's present, by moving from the present to the next present moment, in a way. I don't know if that makes sense or answers the question, but I think it's part of what it did.
Yeah. No, I think it really does help to understand that sometimes it's intimidating, and I think that might be what was behind the question, is to say, come to an organization and say, we've got a 5-year plan going, and they're just like, they don't want to. But yet when you come in and, like you said, focus on the first thing, and then as that evolved and their commitment, obviously they were ready for, well, what's next? Well, what's next? And so it's continued. Really, really great to see. Now so there's a couple, go ahead, Maria.
In the first year, we started that journey with a top team and doing LWS. We didn't know that it would take a full year, but we knew that it would take the time it needed to take. And it ended up being the whole year when they felt ready to turn around to face their teams, having made the change themselves or having started on the change themselves. So yes, it happened very organically in this case.
Okay, great.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, that's great. That's great. So there's a couple of questions around communication. So let me see if I can kind of ask them both.
Yes.
So one is, what role did communication play in preparing for this large undertaking? The other question was, did you start communicating the ideal culture to the rest of the organization on year 1? Or did you wait until the top team team had started to change before you really started to share that. So it's about how much did you share with everyone about the feedback and the results, as well as how did you get them prepared for the change?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. We did not start sharing the ideal culture until the top leaders were ready to share the whole culture journey so far, up until that moment, to the rest of the organization. So during the first year, it was a very light touch on communication, because the organization was just receiving communications about, we're exploring culture, we're doing a culture diagnostics, and that was all, just in terms of inviting them to participate and nothing else. Then from year 2 onwards, we worked, they are supply chain, very strong on process, and so they have a very, very solid communications team, and we work very closely with them to support what we do with communications every step of the way. Communication is a big amplifier of the culture initiative, so we're working closely with it, but mostly we're consulting with them on key messages, and they are rolling out the communication. And one more thing about communication that I think is important is that's more, because in this culture there was aggressive culture, more the leadership style was more about telling than listening and asking. We encouraged communication to, there's the organizational communication, but we also encourage communication to originate from each of the leaders to their teams, and to be very personal in a way, and to be close and open to listening and to getting that two-way feedback. So there's the organizational, and we're also encouraging lots of one-on-one or leader to team direct communication of what's happening, to open up channels of two-way channels of communication and create trust in teams. So that was another thing for communication.
Yeah, and you can see how that emphasis of what you just described would really support building that impact on the humanistic, encouraging, and the affiliative, really showing the people side and the focus on well-being and interests and listening to what's going on. So I love that. I love that. All right. Well, I think I have one more question, and we are about ready to wrap up. So here's the last question. It's kind of a big one, so feel free to shorten the answer. What is the significance of using a reliable and validated diagnostic instrument like the ones you've used in this program when assessing leaders and measuring culture change?
Wow. Yeah, I would say it's big. It's big. And not because I'm a fan of human synergistics measurements, but no, it's big because first, it gives you quantitative information. So it provides a solid baseline of comparison. So you want to do it at the beginning, and then you want to repeat it, or you want to, it's a baseline. It's a baseline measurement, and it's quantitative. So especially cultures like this one, very data-driven, task-oriented cultures, it's a very objective, if that exists, mirror. To hold up to. So I'm a big fan of using measurement instruments for measurement at the beginning and throughout culture transformation processes. Yes.
That's great. And it provides, like you said, the trusted data so that you get some objective, and then you can also look at all the qualitative work that you did, and it helps to tell the story as well. So excellent.
Yes, the qualitative adds the color, it adds the stories, it adds a lot of additional information, and how it, here we could see in the circumplex that it's a highly competitive culture. So what's the flavor of competitive in this culture in particular? That's the qualitative. But the norm is the quantitative, the culture norm. So
that's great. I love it. I love it. So excellent questions, everyone.
Yes,
thank you so much for sharing. And that actually brings us to our time. We hope you gained some insights, ideas that you can use in your work, or inspire you to think of maybe something that you're working on. If your organization is looking for guidance on culture or leadership, I invite you to contact me. And if you have questions specific to the topics that Maria shared, she is available at her contact information. Our contact information is on the slide now. It will also be included in the follow-up email when we include the PowerPoint slide deck. So we want to thank you again, and thank you, Maria, for joining us and sharing this really inspiring transformation journey and story. And we just say thank you to everyone, and have a terrific rest of your day.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, everybody, for attending. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.